You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
Jenna's birthday landed on a Thursday that year, which usually wouldn't matter much. We both worked full-time and celebrating on weekends had always been the norm. But this year felt different. It was our 9th year together and I wanted to remind her we still had something worth pausing life for. I made a reservation at her favorite spot downtown, quiet, not overly flashy, but with those ridiculous soufflés she used to daydream about. She texted me around 5:30 p.m. Work's a mess, might be late. Don't wait up if it gets too late. I stared at the message for a few seconds longer than I should have. Don't wait up? That wasn't her tone. Jenna's always been direct, but that felt dismissive, almost mechanical. Still, I didn't want to overanalyze. Work emergencies happen. I even convinced myself maybe she was planning a surprise for me, something bigger than dinner. I wanted to believe that. She came home at 8:47 p.m. I know because I glanced at the microwave clock the second I heard the door click. Hey, she said, her voice light but detached, like she had just stepped out of a meeting she didn't want to talk about. She walked in carrying a boutique shopping bag and a coffee she hadn't touched. Her coat smelled faintly of something musky and expensive, a cologne I didn't recognize. I couldn't place the scent, but I knew it wasn't mine. That alone was enough to put a weight on my chest. She walked straight past me, muttering something about being wiped, and set the bag on the kitchen counter. You okay? I asked from the hallway. She nodded without looking back. Just drained. Long day. That's when I noticed her dress. It wasn't what she wore to work this morning, it was something else. Classier. Dark navy with a side slit. I'd seen it once before, tucked away in the back of her closet under plastic. She'd called it her not a work dinner unless it's fancy dress. She told me it made her feel put together but not trying too hard. But she'd never actually worn it, at least not with me. I thought you were slammed at work? I tried to sound casual, not accusatory, but I could feel the tension in my voice. She turned to me finally, holding up the shopping bag like a peace offering. I was. But we wrapped early. I swung by Carson and Blake just to look, you know? The clerk offered me this. From the bag, she pulled out a velvet watch box. It was elegant, stark white with silver trim, the kind that doesn't need branding to scream money. Inside was a luxury wristwatch. Sleek brushed steel with a dark face and an engraved clasp. Under the lid, nestled in velvet, it looked more like a trophy than a gift. For you? I asked. For me, she said quickly. Too quickly. I picked it up, flipping it over. The engraving was subtle but personal. For Jay, time well spent. Nice engraving, I said, half joking. He just gave this to you? She shrugged too casually. Said it was a leftover sample. They're rebranding. Probably couldn't sell it. Must be nice, I murmured, still inspecting it. That's a few $100s at least. She was already walking to the sink, rinsing out her untouched coffee cup. He probably just liked the company. I helped him pick out something for his wife. I nodded, but something was off. I couldn't quite name it then, but it was sitting in the air between us like humidity before a storm. She never wore watches. Said they made her feel trapped, like a schedule strapped to her wrist. I even stopped wearing mine years ago because she used to tease me about it. That wasn't the only thing strange about her that night. Her makeup was still flawless, like it had been refreshed just before she came home. Her lipstick hadn't faded. Her eyeliner was crisp. For someone who claimed to be exhausted from work, she looked like she had just stepped out of a dinner party, not a boardroom. We didn't talk much the rest of the evening. She said she was tired and headed to bed early. I stayed in the living room, flipping through channels I wasn't watching and drinking a beer I didn't want. Every little sound in the house felt louder than it should have. Her phone buzzed once, then again, twice, in the bedroom. Normally, I wouldn't have noticed. But the silence made it impossible to ignore. I didn't go snooping. I'm not that guy. Or maybe I hadn't become that guy yet. But when I passed by the doorway to our room on the way to brush my teeth, I saw her on the bed, holding her phone screen close to her chest like it was something sacred. When she noticed me, she clicked it off and flipped it face down. You okay? I asked. She nodded. Just scrolling. You coming to bed? Yeah, I said. Just a minute. I stayed in the bathroom a little longer than I needed to, just standing there, staring at the mirror. I didn't recognize the expression on my face. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something closer to confusion. Or maybe fear. Back in the bedroom, Jenna was already under the covers, turned away from me. I slid into bed beside her, the space between us colder than usual. Normally, she'd at least touch my arm. Say something. But that night, nothing. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. The glow of her phone, faint and blue, lit up the edge of her pillow once more. She reached out, tapped it off again. That was when I felt it, something subtle but undeniable. Like someone else was in the room, not physically, but in presence. There was a third party in our silence, in her phone, in the watch box on the counter. Someone I couldn't see. Someone I couldn't name. But someone who had clearly made an impression. In the morning, she was up before me, already dressed in casual clothes and sipping coffee like nothing had happened. The watch was gone from the counter. "Hey," she said. "Heading out to meet Marcy for brunch." I blinked the sleep from my eyes. "Marcy?" "Yeah," she said, brushing hair behind her ear without making eye contact. "She just broke up with Brad. She needs to talk." I sat up watching her. "You didn't mention that." "I forgot," she said quickly. "Sorry." I nodded. "Okay." She was gone a few minutes later. After the door shut, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the empty space where the watch box had been. I didn't know if it was worse to imagine that Jenna was hiding something or that she was slowly disappearing in front of me, piece by piece, and didn't think I'd notice. And still, I told myself it was probably nothing. After the watch incident, I started seeing things, no, not in the paranoid sense, not like I was losing my grip. It was more like waking up and realizing your house has been slowly rearranged over time. Everything still looks familiar, but something's off. A chair turned slightly. A photo frame just a little tilted. The things you didn't notice changing until it was too late. That's what my marriage started to feel like. It didn't begin with a watch. That was just the first time I couldn't explain something away. But the signs had been there, subtle and scattered across the past several months like breadcrumbs I had chosen to ignore. Maybe out of trust. Maybe out of fear. Or maybe because part of me didn't want to know the truth. I remember the first business trip that didn't make sense. It was back in January. Jenna told me she had to fly out for a last-minute conference in Atlanta. That struck me as odd because her company rarely sent people out of state for anything. They were frugal, very frugal. Besides, Jenna hated traveling alone. She used to text me from the gate, send selfies from the hotel lobby, ask me to FaceTime before bed. This time? Nothing. One text when she landed and another 2 days later, both dry and generic. Made it. Long day. Talk soon. Busy day again. Flying back early. I asked her about the conference when she got home. What was it about? Who spoke? She gave vague answers. Data privacy, compliance stuff. Nothing exciting. But she looked energized. Giddy even. And not in the drained, just flew 3 hours on no sleep way. She was glowing. That glow stayed and so did the distance. Over time, her phone habits changed too. It used to be just part of the furniture, laying on the coffee table, sometimes buzzing with work emails or group chats. Now it was always with her. Bathroom, laundry room, even tucked under her pillow while she slept. And it was always face down. That started after the trip. She also stopped sharing her schedule like she used to. I didn't notice at first, but looking back, the pattern was there. We'd always had this informal rhythm. We'd check in about the week on Sundays. I've got that meeting on Tuesday. Don't forget my mom's birthday dinner Thursday. Little stuff, but it kept us in sync. That faded. Suddenly, she'd come home and casually mention being at a client dinner. Or a happy hour with coworkers I didn't even know she liked. It wasn't the events themselves, it was the way they were brought up, like footnotes in a story I wasn't reading anymore. Then there was Michael. He started popping up around mid-spring. I noticed his name once on her phone screen, a text notification that lit up while we were watching TV. Just Michael, no last name or emoji, nothing to indicate what kind of contact he was. She turned the phone over so fast I barely saw the message. I remember what I asked her. "Who's Michael?" She gave me a tight-lipped smile. "New guy at work. I'm training him." "Okay," I said, trying to sound casual. "He texts you after hours?" She shrugged. "He's kind of clueless. Doesn't know boundaries yet." That made sense. Kind of. But then the texts kept coming. Always brief, always late. One night, I watched her delete one right after reading it, fingers moving faster than reflex. I didn't say anything, but I felt something cold lodge itself in my stomach. One Saturday afternoon, I brought it up again. "So how's Michael doing?" She barely looked up from her laptop. "Fine. Still annoying." "You talk to him a lot for someone annoying." That made her pause. "Why are you asking?" "No reason," I said quickly. "Just curious." That was a lie. I wasn't curious, I was cautious. Another change I couldn't unsee, she stopped wanting to do things we used to love. Hiking on Sundays, late-night grocery runs for stupid snacks, binging true crime shows together. She'd say she was tired or behind on emails. But then she'd come home from meetings with perfect makeup and a subtle perfume I didn't recognize. One weekend, I suggested we take a short trip. Just a cabin, a lake, something to reset. She hesitated. Too much going on at work, she said. It's just not a good time. Not even a weekend? I pressed. No pressure. Just thought it'd be nice to unplug. She smiled thinly. I need to be reachable. You know how things are. I dropped it, but something shifted in me that day. I started wondering who she really needed to be reachable for. There was one night that still haunts me. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch. The TV was on, but we weren't watching it. Her face was bathed in the glow of her phone, her expression blank. I said her name once, then twice. She didn't hear me. Or she chose not to. I got up, went to the kitchen, poured a drink, and just stood there, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator, the muted sound of her scrolling. I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Not just her routines, but her energy. Her rhythms. Her silence. It wasn't the silence of someone tired or distracted. It was the silence of someone elsewhere. It hit me then. I was grieving someone who was still in the house. We didn't fight much. That was the scary part. We had nothing to fight about because she gave me nothing to work with. Conversations became transactional. Did you get the mail? We need more detergent. I'm going out for a bit. I told myself I was overthinking. That it was just a rough patch. That all couples go through these weird, detached phases. But in the quiet hours, those stretches of time when you can't lie to yourself, I felt it. Something had been building behind me while I wasn't looking, and now it was towering overhead. She was changing, and not in a growing up, figuring herself out kind of way. This was different. She was becoming unavailable in the most mate ways. Emotionally absent. Selectively present. Her life was evolving into something I wasn't invited to participate in. One night I stood in front of her closet and counted the shoes. I don't know why I did it, but I just did. 2 pairs were gone. Both heels. One black, one nude. Shoes I'd seen her wear maybe once each, both still spotless the last time I noticed. I asked her about them casually over dinner. Oh yeah. I left them in the office after a meeting. Haven't had a chance to grab them. It was automatic, like she had the answer preloaded. That's when I realized something else. Her lies weren't clumsy anymore. They were seamless. Rehearsed. I wish I could say I confronted her. That I drew a line. That I stormed into the room one night and demanded the truth. But I didn't. I sat with it. Lived in it. Tried to find holes in my own suspicions before I ever considered hers. Because once you cross that threshold, once you admit something might be deeply wrong, it's not something you can unknow. It changes you. And it changes them. So I waited. I watched. And quietly, I prepared myself for what I already knew was coming. The weekend Jenna left for Ashley's Bachelorette getaway, I already knew I wouldn't hear from her much. She had warned me ahead of time, lots of girls, no Wi-Fi at the Airbnb, don't freak if I go dark for a bit. That was the first red flag. Jenna never talked like that. Don't freak? She used to love updating me even during her busiest trips. This time, she laid the groundwork in advance, like someone giving an alibi before the crime had even occurred. Still, I smiled, nodded, told her to have fun. Packed her favorite snacks for the road. Carried her bag to the car like a good, trusting husband. Then I did what I never thought I'd do in a million years. I tracked her. It wasn't some dramatic cloak and dagger mission. I didn't tail her down the highway in a black SUV. I simply slipped a tracker, a discreet little rectangle no larger than a lighter, into the lining of her carry-on. A tech-savvy friend had suggested it when I first confided in him about Michael and the late nights. At the time I said no. Told him I wasn't that guy. Now I was. When Jenna drove off that Friday morning, I watched the little dot on my screen until it shrank from sight. She headed west, just like she said she would. And for a while, everything lined up. Around noon, the dot stopped at what looked like a gas station. Then a few hours later, a cafe off the interstate. Normal stuff. But then around 5:30 p.m. she veered. Not slightly. Not by accident. A full detour 60 miles south of where she said the girls were staying. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in on the map. She had stopped at a beachfront resort, a high-end wedding venue known for private ceremonies, a place we looked at once when we were engaged but couldn't afford. I stared at the glowing pin, convinced it had to be wrong. I waited. Watched the dot settle there for the night. No movement. Not even a step away. The next morning, the knot in my chest hardened. I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I checked social media. Jenna hadn't posted, of course. But I remembered Ashley's name. Found her Instagram. No recent stories, but one of her friends, someone I barely recognized, had posted a group *T, 7 women and 1 man, all smiling in front of a garden archway. In the back, barely visible but unmistakable, was Jenna. She was standing next to Michael. Michael, the coworker. The annoying new guy who didn't respect boundaries. But it wasn't just their proximity that caught my eye. It was the way she was looking at him, shoulders tilted, hand gently brushing his arm, head angled slightly toward him like they were posing for a wedding album. Then I saw the comments. So happy for you both. Mrs. and Mr. M finally. Can't believe it actually happened. Congratulations. No hashtags. No location tags. But one comment chilled me to the bone. Heard you did it out of state, sneaky but smart ring. I clicked the commenter's profile. Another coworker. Someone Jenna had mentioned in passing. My hands were cold. I refreshed the post twice just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't. The betrayal wasn't a maybe anymore. It wasn't a vibe or a suspicion or a collection of little signs I could brush aside. It was right there. In photos. In captions. In a pin on a map showing me my wife was at a resort likely celebrating a wedding she wasn't supposed to be part of. And she wasn't just there. She was the reason it was happening. I looked up the resort's website. Weddings were common there. Last-minute packages, same-day licenses, elopement specialists. It all fit. Later that afternoon, she texted. No service last night. It's beautiful here. I'll call tomorrow. Love you, Reheart. The gall. I stared at that text for 5 full minutes. She didn't know I knew. She had no idea. But suddenly everything made sense. The shifts in her behavior. The vanishing shoes. The late nights. The smiling silence. The energy she brought back from work trips. The emotional distance, it was all tied to him. I opened our photo album on my phone. Scrolled back to old pictures, anniversaries, trips, birthdays. The way she used to lean into me. The way she used to smile without looking guarded. That Jenna felt like a stranger now. And the woman standing next to Michael? That wasn't my wife. That was someone else. Someone I didn't know anymore. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was still. Clear. It's a strange thing watching your life fracture in real time and feeling almost nothing. I thought I'd scream, cry, throw something. But all I did was sit there, staring at my phone, slowly reassembling the truth. There was no friends weekend. No Airbnb. No missed calls. She had planned this. She'd lied so many times I couldn't trace the first one anymore. But I had the truth now. Inarguable. Documented. Solid. I backed up the photos. ****ed the comments. Saved the tracker log. Opened a private folder and uploaded everything. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but I knew I had passed a line. One I could never uncross. She called the next day as promised. Hey, babe, she said. Sorry again for the radio silence. Ashley's been a mess. We've all been comforting her. Kind of exhausting. I said nothing. You there? She asked, her tone light. Yeah, I said finally. Just tired. Glad you're okay. She rambled a bit after that. Something about too many mimosas and a walk on the beach. I let her talk. Let her fill the air with noise. I even laughed once just to keep her comfortable. Because I wanted her to stay comfortable for now. There was still work to be done. Jenna returned home the following Monday just after noon. She texted to say she was grabbing lunch on the way and asked if I wanted anything. I told her no. I had already eaten. I had already packed her things. I had already changed the locks. When she pulled into the driveway, I watched from the upstairs hallway window. Her car door opened and she stepped out, sunglasses on, drink in hand, smiling like someone coming back from a spa retreat. Not a care in the world. Not a shadow of guilt on her face. That was the most surreal part, how normal she looked. She walked up to the front door, turned the knob, and found it didn't budge. She tried again. Then rang the bell. I didn't answer. She rang a second time, then knocked. Babe, she called through the door. The lock's jammed or something. Another knock, louder this time. Mark. That was the last time she used my name without fear behind it. I waited 10 more seconds, then sent a message through the security app. The locks aren't jammed. They've been changed. You no longer live here. Seconds later, her phone lit up. I watched her read it, her mouth parting slightly in disbelief. Her hands flew to her pocket, pulling out her phone. I ignored the incoming call. Then another. Then a third. She left a voicemail and I deleted it before listening. She started pacing the porch, tapping furiously at her screen. Her sunglasses were off now and her face was drawn, confused, shaken like she was standing on stage during a play she hadn't rehearsed for. I didn't need to see any more. I stepped away from the window and walked to the kitchen. My attorney said the moment would come when she realized I wasn't going to yell or cry or beg. That I wasn't going to give her the scene she was subconsciously rehearsing in her head. That moment was now. Here's what I had done in the 48 hours before Jenna's return. I met with my lawyer. Showed him the photos, the tracker data, the wedding venue's registration log I pulled from public records in the county she'd visited. He didn't even blink. "We'll handle it," he said, already scribbling on a legal pad. "Froze our joint accounts." The moment he gave me the go-ahead, I contacted the bank and locked every shared asset. She couldn't spend a cent without triggering a notification. Changed every password, email, insurance, security systems, car tracking, even the utility accounts. I left her nothing she could use to stall or sneak behind. Notified HR at her company discreetly. My attorney warned me to prepare for a professional fallout if the alleged marriage to Michael was real and if Michael's own marital status contradicted that. Secured the house. New locks. New codes. New remote access. The property was legally in my name. She had no rights to it without a court order. I also backed up everything: photos, messages, bank statements, call logs, **TS. Multiple drives. One physical, one encrypted in the cloud. I even removed her fingerprint access from the garage keypad. Quiet, thorough, surgical. The truth had been emotional. The response? Completely mechanical. I didn't trust myself to act any other way. If I let emotion in, it would twist me, eat me alive. So I pushed it all down. Not to deny it, but to delay it. Until I was protected. She stayed outside for nearly 20 minutes, making calls, trying to open her banking app, which she couldn't, checking the garage code, which had changed, and finally calling the non-emergency police line. They arrived 15 minutes later, 2 officers in a patrol car who looked more bored than concerned. I watched through the security camera feed as Jenna spoke with them. Flustered, hands moving rapidly. She pointed at the house, then back at her phone. One officer eventually walked up and rang the doorbell. I answered through the intercom. "Sir," the officer said, "we've got someone here claiming she lives at this address." "She used to," I replied calmly. "Her name's not on the deed. She doesn't reside here anymore." There was a pause. The officer turned to look at Jenna, then back at the camera. "Is this a civil matter?" "Entirely," I said. "She has legal representation. She'll be receiving formal documents by the end of the day." Another pause. The officer nodded slowly. "Understood. We'll advise her to leave." Jenna's face was pure disbelief. I could almost hear her voice in my head. "Mark, what are you doing? This is insane. We can talk about this." But we wouldn't. Talking was for people who made mistakes. This wasn't that. This was betrayal engineered with precision. Later that night, I got a text. "Whatever you think happened, it's not what it looks like. That ceremony wasn't real. We were drunk. It was just a joke. Please, can we talk?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because my attorney had already uncovered something worse. The marriage was filed. Legally. Under a different name, in a different state, one with lax residency requirements. It had been fast-tracked using falsified personal info. But the kicker? Michael was already married. Still is. So the ceremony, real or not, constituted bigamy. Even if the paperwork never finalized, the intent was documented. Pictures, witnesses, comments online. The venue's own event calendar, which included M+J private sunset ceremony, in their July booking log. The legal team jumped on it. They compiled a case file, timestamps, digital trails, messages Jenna forgot to delete, email confirmations tied to our joint card. Her phone's location data matched perfectly with the tracker I had placed. There was no room for interpretation. It wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was fraud, identity misrepresentation, potential employment violations depending on her company's policies. Possibly more. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the manila folder my lawyer had handed me, sipping cold coffee like I was reading instructions for assembling furniture. This wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I was done reacting. This wasn't about salvaging anything. It was about ending it the right way, efficiently, completely, with the same level of calculation she had shown me for the past 6 months. There's a strange comfort in facts, in documentation. You don't need to argue with them. You just hand them over and let them do the work. The next morning, the first formal notice of separation was sent to her attorney. The second was overnight to Jenna's parents' address. just in case she tried to stall. The third was emailed directly to her company's internal legal counsel. My lawyer believed in redundant pressure. By lunch, she had called 3 times, left 2 voicemails, sent 1 final message. Please don't do this. I didn't want it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you. But she did. She just didn't think I'd respond like this. She thought I'd break, shout, beg, cry. She thought she could bend the narrative like she had before, spin it into confusion and half-truths. But I'd seen too much. I knew too much. And most importantly, I felt nothing anymore. You can't guilt someone who has nothing left to lose. I poured out the rest of my coffee, placed her old house key in a drawer, and closed it gently. Step by step, I was removing her from every room in this house. And not once, did I look back. It didn't take long for Jenna's confidence to fracture. The morning after she was served, she showed up again, this time without a smile, without the pretense of misunderstanding. She stood at the foot of the driveway in yesterday's clothes, arms folded like she was waiting for a miracle. But none came. The door stayed shut. She tried the bell again, then knocked. When I didn't answer, she pulled out her phone, walked a few feet away, and made a call. Moments later, a silver sedan rolled up, the same 2 police officers from the day before. I watched from my office window as she approached them with more urgency this time, her hands flying in frustrated arcs. The officers glanced toward the house, then back at her. One of them made a calming gesture, the kind they probably used 100 times a week. Eventually, they both walked back to their vehicle and Jenna stood there stunned. That's what a civil matter looks like when it's reinforced by paperwork. She didn't try to enter the house again. But that afternoon, her messages turned from defensive to panicked. I don't understand what you think this proves. Whatever Ashley told you, it's not accurate. You're being manipulated. Let's talk. Please call me. Just once. We can fix this. Fix what, exactly? The ceremony? The fake last name? The false travel details? The act of going behind my back while pretending to live a normal life? My attorney followed up on the venue documentation. It confirmed not only the reservation but also that the registration email used Jenna's work address, the same one she used on joint insurance and benefits. That single misstep allowed us to build a legal thread that linked her workplace to the breach. Meanwhile, we submitted a formal request to the out-of-state county clerk's office. The reply came within 72 hours. Marriage license application filed under the names Jenna redacted and Michael redacted, July 2nd. No final certificate recorded. That one sentence nearly broke me. Not because of what it meant, but because of what it tried to become. Even if the license hadn't finalized, the intent was crystal clear. She had filed paperwork to legally bind herself to another man. She had planned a life she was never going to tell me about. And then there was Michael. As my lawyer dug deeper, something else surfaced. Michael was, as suspected, still legally married. A quiet record in another state, sealed by outdated contact info but not yet dissolved. His own wife, who we reached through a mutual acquaintance, was shocked to learn that he had been posing as available. They were on a break, she said, not divorced. They were still sharing a mortgage. It turned out Jenna and Michael weren't just reckless. They were legally entangled in a way that, if pursued, could constitute bigamy or attempted fraud in 2 jurisdictions. The weight of that fact alone would eventually dismantle her carefully crafted lies. By midweek, Jenna's job caught wind of the situation. I hadn't intended to involve her workplace, but once her company's legal department received documentation from mine, emails sent using company systems, travel paid for with corporate reimbursement, they had no choice. Her HR department opened an internal investigation. According to the policy guidelines we found online, any use of company resources to engage in deceptive, fraudulent, or reputationally damaging activity was grounds for termination. She had checked every box. 2 days later, her LinkedIn status changed to open to work. Just like that. Her silence after that was loud. No more frantic texts. No more pleased to meet. I imagined she was busy scrambling, grasping at explanations, rehearsing half-truths to tell friends or family. But the damage was spreading faster than she could contain. Then finally she called. I didn't answer, but I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was barely a whisper. Mark, I don't even know what to say anymore. I know you're angry and you should be. But please believe me when I say I never wanted it to turn out like this. It was never supposed to mean anything. I didn't think it would go that far. I made a mistake. A stupid, ugly mistake. But I don't deserve to lose everything over it. She trailed off. then hung up. That was the moment I realized she wasn't sorry for what she'd done, only sorry that she got caught. Everything she had counted on, my silence, my confusion, my patience, was gone. In its place, she was facing legal consequences, professional exile, and the collapse of a future she thought she could manage from the shadows. That week, I filed an additional complaint through my attorney, citing emotional distress and breach of fiduciary duty. We jointly filed our taxes that year. If her fake travel claims were reimbursed through corporate funds and included on our returns, I had a right to distance myself and any liability from her decisions. More evidence. More backup. Every keystroke, every payment log, every message was stacked like bricks in a wall she couldn't scale. My lawyer called it death by documentation. We didn't even need her confession. Still, I received one. Late Friday night, I found a letter slipped through the front door. Unmarked envelope. Inside, a 2-page note in Jenna's handwriting. Still familiar, still neat. No salutation, no closure. I know you probably won't read this. I just needed to say something without your lawyer seeing it. I made a mistake. I know that word means nothing right now, but I swear, I didn't go into this thinking I was going to ruin us. Started slow. Just conversation. Someone who listened. Someone who made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a while. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. But I got lost in it. I let myself believe it wasn't real. Even when we joked about rings and venues, I didn't think it would actually happen. And then it did. And by the time I realized I couldn't fix it, you already knew. You were always smarter than I gave you credit for. I'm sorry for lying, for disrespecting what we had. I know I've lost everything now. I just hope someday you'll remember the part of me that tried to be good to you. I did love you. Maybe I still do. I just forgot how to act like it. I didn't respond. I didn't even keep the letter. I scanned it for records and burned the original in the backyard grill the next morning. There's no romance in closure. No poetry. Just a fading sense of gravity. Like you've been underwater too long and finally remember how to breathe. The woman who once curled up beside me on rainy mornings, who held my hand during funerals, who made me laugh with just one look across a crowded room. She wasn't coming back, because she hadn't just lied. She had left, piece by piece, long before the watch, the wedding, or the confrontation. And now, she was watching her story collapse in real time, her job, her image, her fallback plans, all dissolving under the weight of her own invention. That was never my doing. I simply stopped protecting her from the consequences she created. By the end of the week, all correspondence between us was directed through lawyers. She stopped trying to talk to me directly, probably because she finally understood. She hadn't just lost the home. She'd lost the version of me that would have tried to fix it. And there would be no rebuilding.